Welcome back to the Contacts Coaching Podcast. We are joined today by Adam Eaton, head boys basketball coach at Lyndhurst High School in Marysville, California. Coach, thanks for being here today and wearing your Arizona Cardinals jersey because you have to represent the NFL, of course.
Yes, sir. It's fun being a Cardinals fan in the northern area because everyone is a division rival, so I get a lot of looks wearing it up here.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let's dive in. Why don't you take us through your coaching background? How'd you get started in this? How'd you end up in Lyndhurst? Tell us the journey from start until present day.
Okay, that's a long story. Or let's say long story, but 13 years. I was getting my bachelor's degree in physical education at Cal State Bakersfield. Uh, the elementary district, junior high district is K through 8 down there. Emailed the department, needed coaches. So I was like, basically the reason I wanted to be a teacher was coach. So I was like, here's a great opportunity. Started with basketball, seventh grade basketball boys. I got into coaching because I wanted to coach football, actually. So crazy there, but
I should have
wanted to
guessed that
coach.
based on the jersey.
Yeah, that's an interesting journey there. But I wanted to coach football. So I was like, oh, basketball. I played basketball more than I did football, but I always wanted to coach football for some reason. And basketball started, had some success. And then from there, so that was like November of '09. In March of 2010, then I started coaching football as an expansion team for a youth league. Uh, didn't have too much success there. And now that leads all the way to October, still coaching football, started coaching boys volleyball at the junior high. And then from there, went into my second season of basketball at the junior high level. But I think at that time, I switched over to girls, coach junior high girls. And then after the second year at junior high, I started coaching high school basketball at South High in Bakersfield. Coached there for about 2 years. Then switched over to my high school that I graduated from, West High School in Bakersfield. This is all in Bakersfield. Was there for about 2 years, met somebody, they needed coaches at a school I ended up subbing at. They asked me to come on. So I joined them. That's Independence High School. Uh, then I did my student teaching there for that degree I had mentioned. So I was there for a couple years, finished my degree program, or my credential program, I should say. At that time was my credential program. Finished that with student teaching, was ready to become a teacher. So I had to leave there and I took over the program at Arvin High School. Um, was trying to rebuild that, became a teacher out there. And then just after being down there for a while, I just wanted something new and came up here to the Marysville area. Saw that Lyndhurst was looking for a coach, applied there, took over the JV program for a year with the intention to build the program to take over the varsity the following year, and that's what happened. And so now I'm on my second year as a varsity coach and third year at Lyndhurst.
Fantastic. Now, what you left out is that pro wrestling brought you to the Sacramento area. So let's not ignore that and let's dive into that story because I think it's pretty informative in some of the conversation we're going to have.
Yeah, so one of the reasons, one of those new opportunities I was looking for was pro wrestling. Been a huge fan my whole life. It's always been there throughout my life, and then just wanted to do something new. And with that, the crazy thing with that is that I was actually going to leave coaching. I'd been doing it for 10 years, and I was going to leave coaching and just focus on the wrestling aspect. Uh, but then when the job came up, I applied. I was like, always coaching. I was a teacher because I was coaching. That's why I became a teacher. So it's like every opportunity always looked like, okay, this can lead to a teaching job. And that's what happened. But I came up here for pro wrestling and started doing all of that pro wrestling. And now I'm a referee. I just had my year anniversary as a pro wrestling referee. Been a backstage interviewer for the last year and a half. I had my own YouTube show for a while. I've done camera work and films. I've made promo videos to hype the upcoming shows. I've done all kinds of stuff doing that. And so now the problem is balancing the two of wrestling and basketball. And sometimes it becomes tough. Just like yesterday, I had a coaching clinic in San Francisco, 2 hour drive from my house, left my house at 6 a.m., went to the coaching clinic, left there, drove 45 minutes to a show right after that. And then I didn't get home till 12:30. So trying to balance it too.
Long days, but given the eclectic journey you've been on across the board, I'm sure that all of that informs your current approach. And what I would love to know is, as you settled into your first head high school job, right? Back at Arvin, is that correct?
Yeah, actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you had been through middle school, assistant coaching. You'd done the rounds of all the Bakersfield schools with a geographic notation on them, although it doesn't sound like you got Bakersfield. What did you realize right away you need to figure out at Arvin High School? And as a follow-up, once you landed in Marysville at Lyndhurst and went back to being the JV coach and then back to the head coach a year later, how did that realization shift the second time around?
So those two schools are very similar, and they're both about 30 minutes away from a big city. I don't know if you consider Yuba City a big city, but Bakersfield was the major city from Arvin, and it's about 30 minutes away. And then Olivehurst, a major city near that, is Sacramento, and that's about 30, 40 minutes away. It's very similar in that aspects, very similar in school population, in school size. And then we have this big school of about 1,300 kids, but nobody, I shouldn't say nobody, but there's very little interest in athletics. And it's rebuilding both programs and trying to get kids excited to play. And that's what the goal was in both areas. So taking that experience in Arvin, and the good thing about Arvin is I had friends, I had people I'd been coaching with, I had people that I'd known since high school or junior high coaching with me. And we did that together. But when I came over to Lyndhurst, I was on my own, but I had that experience on how to make things, how to get kids excited to come out, even though the records don't show or the program has been down for the past few years for whatever the reasons are. How do we get kids excited to come out?
So talk a little bit about how you do that when there isn't traditional interest at the school, when you are theoretically starting from a place of growth. What tools and techniques have you found to be successful?
So I try to make it mean something. I try to set it apart from the different sports. I spend a lot of time with the students. It's especially easier when I'm on campus, and that's the benefit of being a teacher because I'm on campus. So then I get to be around these kids, and I give them a place to go, like for lunches or when they're not in class, we go there. So that's part of it. But then just the way that you run practice, you build those relationships with the students. You put in the work and you show them. Lead by example is how I feel. And I just developed the relationships with the students, and then they tell their friends to tell their friends, and it builds like that. It's hard. I'm not sure if there's any like particular thing. This is what I do, but the if I had to narrow it down, it'd be the relationship building, the understanding the students or the player, the person, understanding them as a person, trying to reach them that way so that they know, hey, here's somebody that cares. Because sometimes they don't have that with the demographic in the area that we're at. That's why I like being in those schools like that.
So when you move to a new area and you don't have a, let's say, pocket full of relationships with former high school friends or fellow coaches, and you have to figure out that staffing piece on your own, how do you go about that? What strategies do you have? What have you found to be successful? What hasn't worked? Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the main thing we do is just like we put the post online, and I start asking around. And what helped me when I came up here was I joined a basketball group that a bunch of guys get together on the weekends and we play basketball. And I joined that through Facebook, found it, joined it, started going and playing with them and building those relationships there through the community. Just I just try to get involved in different things that I'm doing or different things that are around so I could try to build those relationships. When it came time for that I needed a coach, I posted in the group, hey, I'm looking for a coach. And because I had played with the guys, they knew who I was, I knew who they were. It helped out in that sense. And that's how I have my staff now. I met him through that, through playing, through just going out in the community and doing stuff. Wrestling kind of helps with that, even though wrestling is more into Sacramento. But that experience of just coming out here and being, this is what I want to do, and going to shows by myself at first before I came involved, and just learning how to just go do things on my own, it opened the door. It made me more open to meet people.
Talk a little bit about how your other passion of wrestling has influenced your approach to coaching, your approach to, let's call it gamesmanship, to entertainment, to how you show up, how you get the kids involved. Talk a little bit about what you've learned over here. Sport that is very different than your traditional high school athletics.
Uh, yeah, so like I mentioned before, pro wrestling has always been a part of my life, and like even throughout my childhood and when things weren't going the best in my life, that I always had that. So I always studied that. I watched the documentaries and I listened to the wrestlers, and so there was this thing ingrained in me that I knew, and it was like about paying dues, paying respects, working hard, showing up early, being on time, first one there, last one to leave. And so I knew all of that before I got into coaching or like other traditional sports hardcore. That was already there. So I take that mentality that I knew and I apply it to the coaching world. And that kind of goes back into building the programs. Like if I'm asking students to be there at 8 a.m. on a Saturday, I got to be there at 8 a.m. on a Saturday. I'm there at 7:30. I'm on time. I'm the first one there, last one to leave. And I lead by example that way. If they ask, can we open the gym? Yeah, I'm there. Whatever they need. That goes back to that. But then on top of that, just the respect portion, the learning from other people, the not being afraid to make those connections or to get advice from somebody or from anybody, or take things from just all aspects, everything around you, because that's what wrestling is. It's a show. It has action and drama and comedy. And so you have to take things from different areas. And so that's led me to, that helps me in the aspect of coaching. It helps me to, if I'm just watching somebody or listening to a podcast or like the coaching clinic, like whatever it is, like on YouTube, don't be afraid to learn. Listen to everybody. I've been doing this 13 years, but if somebody came out and they've only been doing it twice or something and they had something, I'm like, you know what, that's a good idea. It doesn't matter to me that they have less experience. They have a different perspective, and I'm not afraid to take those or listen to that.
How would you say your work as a special ed teacher has informed your approach to coaching?
Yeah, that's a good one, because with special ed, you have to treat every student as their individual. That's what their IEP, the individual education plan. Every student has the different needs. Every student learns differently. Different things are going to make them successful. And so I always take the good teaching practices that I learned through my bachelor's degree, my master's, and my credentials, and then my experience in the classroom. And I apply that, as in each athlete is their own person. So some athletes need to be like just talk to, like we're talking now. Some won't respond to that. Some, like, you have to get on and almost and yell at them, like they respond to that. And some of them will respond to running, some of them won't. And you just gotta find what they respond to, and then also understand that they're all good at something. So what are they good at? And then maximize that so that they be successful. Put them in positions to be successful. I have my system, I have my stuff that I like to run, but it's not going to work every time. It's not going to work every year. I have to go with the athletes that I have with me. I have to be able to adapt to that.
Yeah, no doubt. I think the trap that sometimes we fall into is, how do we create consistency and equality, and this is how we do things without really taking into account the individual needs of each of the athletes, right? And there's the differentiated instruction of the classroom that doesn't always make it onto the field or the court or the pool or pick your medium. How have you found that showing up? And can you give us some specific examples of the value of making sure that you meet each kid where they are?
Yeah. So I had this one kid back at West High School, had potential, but never, didn't always reach it. And I would try to talk to him and say, hey, I need you to do this. And he would not. Like, he just went out there and just forgot everything I told him. And then he would come back and I would be so upset with him. And I'd like literally get in his face and get on him. And then I was like, are you ready? And he's, yeah, I put him back out there. And he just like, he goes crazy. And I'm just like, okay, that works for that kid. Now I know how to handle that kid. But then now at Lyndhurst, I have a kid where I try to do that and he just shut down. And so now it's just trying to find that way that like, okay, I can't do that with him. So let me try to talk to him. And sometimes that works, but it just, yeah, it's trial and error sometimes. But just understanding that, okay, like this hasn't worked, but let me try a different approach. Like understanding that I do need, there are different approaches. And I talked to my team about that too at the beginning of the year. I talked to them about that. And I'm upfront with them and I tell them like, hey, I'm going to coach in my certain way and this is how I am. But I also understand if I'm doing something that you don't like or it's not reaching you, let's have that conversation so I know how we can be on the same page. If you don't like the yelling, then okay. Or if you need me to yell at you and be on you, then okay, like let me know so I can meet you there and let's figure it out together.
What would you say is the best thing you do in your program that is transferable, meaning that you went to all these different Bakersfield schools, right? Then Arvin, then now you're at Lyndhurst. What's come with you? What do you do that has the largest ripple effect on your culture? So, for example, one of the things that we've always done is, especially with my boys' teams, is hug before practice, before games, after games, to try to break down some walls, to try to give them a sense of emotion, right? Which isn't necessarily taught well. What are some of the things that you do that you can offer others?
It's easier for me because I'm on campus. But one thing that I do is team lunches on game days. I found this out by accident. I was subbing at West High School. I ended up being like a semi long term. It was like a 2 week spot at West. And it was during basketball season. So I told all my boys, I was like, hey, my door's open. So they all came in at lunch on their own free will. And we talked about the game that night. This is what we're going to do. This is like here to play, stream up on the board. And we are just all there. We are talking basketball and having a good time eating, but serious because we're game planning, but it's not so serious. Down and be quiet, pay attention. And then we went out and we had a great game. And so now I just started doing that and it becomes a thing. I think it's part of that culture building that we can. Sometimes we're just in there, just chilling and just eating together before a game. And sometimes we do game plan and sometimes it is opportunity for us to talk about different things. The game tonight, or we'll watch film during that time. Sometimes I'll put on a Kobe Bryant motivational video or something. Just different things like that to build culture. I think that's one of the main things that I've taken from place to place. But I really hammered it hard when I got to Lyndhurst.
Good. No, I love that. That's a great idea for people that are listening. Steal that. What about this clinic you just went to? Any takeaways that are applicable? I know there's a fine line between, oh, I really like that, but does it mesh with what I do? And the process of eliminating the noise and focusing on simplicity. But what's the best tool you've adopted lately?
I really liked yesterday at that clinic was just they started with going live at the beginning of practice. I've been doing the same kind of warm-up drills because it's what I did when I started and I had success and just I've stepped here and there, but haven't really gone away from it because I'm like, this is what I've had success in the past. But it's always good to change it. And I did like the way that he ran. They showed a live practice and he walked us through it as he was practicing. And they started with going live like right away. They had a little warm up, like it was like real quick, but they started with live drills like 2-on-2, 3-on-3, 4-on-4, 5-on-5. And they saw what they needed to work on throughout that, and then would make adjustments throughout the practice. They had their plan written out and everything, which that's something I'm doing more as well, as more detailed practice plans. But starting live and starting from the jump, I think that's very important, especially what I've seen over the course of my coaching is the natural ability to compete with students is not, it just hasn't been there. I don't know if that's me. I don't know if it's where I'm coaching. I don't know if it's a generation thing, but whatever the reason is, it's just not there. And I think starting live off the bat at practice, the first thing to do, go live, go competition, will help with that.
Yeah, Tyler Costin was here a couple years ago with us, and one of the things that he implemented in his stay with us was just playing 5-on-5 right off the bat. And his take was, what do kids want to do? They want to play. How do you build that into the beginning of practice and then go from there to break down or focus on specific areas of need?
Yeah, and I feel like I've done that at times. Sometimes I'm just like, especially during tryouts, I'm like, I just want to see him play and see where we're at before I like break down things. But after tryouts, I get away from it because I'm like, this is what we need to work on, and here's the rigid practice, and this is what basketball practice is supposed to be. Fall into that traditional sense, even though I feel like I'm a little bit non-traditional sometimes, but I do fall into that. Like, it's supposed to be this. We're supposed to have a warm up. We're supposed to do this. We're supposed to do that. And yeah, like it never really clicked to just, hey, go live. I've heard things like, oh, start competing right away, but the go live thing just like it clicked. I was like, hey, okay, that I'm taking that.
No, for sure. And you said you're a little bit non-traditional. What do you mean by that? And how would your background in coaching these other sports bleed into basketball specifically, right? So there's, I don't know how many sports Lyndhurst offers. We have 25. As the AD, I wander around and observe other sports practices and what they're doing. So I'm curious kind of what you've picked up watching other sports that aren't basketball.
Yeah, we have the traditional sports like football, basketball, soccer, baseball, softball, volleyball, slam, golf, track. We have the traditional sports that most high schools have. I like to look for things that are different. I might not always run them, but I like to do different drills. I like to look for where differences. I think I feel that my approach to how I handle the students are a little bit different too than what has been in the past. So it's just, but in saying that, I felt that I was non-traditional because I like to do different things. But what I have found though is that things are like traditional and they've been staples in basketball for a reason because they work. And for a while, I got away from them because I would like I would go into coaching groups and stuff and read stuff. And for example, like the 3-man weave, there a lot of people like, oh, it's an outdated concept and it's not game like and this and that. And I completely understand that because you're probably not going to run a 3-man weave in a game most times. But there are great skills that come from that, especially when you're dealing with students that have never played basketball before, that don't know how to catch, that don't know how to run, that don't know concepts of movement and awareness. So as non-traditional as I'm like, oh, let's eliminate that and eliminate that, I've swung back into the no, like there's points to do this. So I feel like I'm stuck in that middle, brought up in the old school way and then trying to be like the new school type stuff, but I get stuck and just not swinging too far one way. I got
Well, I think you said it earlier, right? Where you got to figure out what you have in each group. And if you have more talent or ability, you can do things a little differently. And if you don't, then you have to spend more time teaching basic movement. Like you said, movement patterns, right? And so I think I'm one of those guys that doesn't see the translation or the value of doing a 3-man weave anymore. But at the same time, I hear what you're saying, and that depending on the skill level of your group, it's a way that you can hack multiple things at once. What would you say is the thing you've most recently changed your mind on? Meaning, you used to be dug in and really believed X, and now you're off of that and you're over here with Y because of your analysis of that not being something you believe in anymore.
The thing that comes to my mind is like a zone. For years, I ran a 3-2 because I had success with it. I still like it. I still have it in my playbook. But now I've gone to it's just man, and we do that all game. And I've there's been times where it's like most people would come out of it, and I haven't. But it's more because like a teaching tool. Like I'm not just gonna fall back into a zone because things are hard. No, this is what we're doing, and we got to learn how to play this. Um, that comes to mind quickly. And then another thing is traditional conditioning. You go through practice for an hour and a half, and then the last 30 minutes is conditioning. Gone away from that. Like sometimes what I'll do is I'll do a couple drills, and then there's a conditioning drill. So we'll run lines, or we'll run a 17, and we'll go get water, come back, do a couple drills, and then another run or whatever. So I'll do it that way sometimes, or sometimes I just make practice hard, and we just like full court layups. That's how we start, or 3-man weave, and just make sure that we're moving. That's how my practice was the other day. Like it was just an hour of just nonstop movement for everybody. So they were dead tired, and we didn't do any runs. We just did drills. I had 17s written down on my paper, but I'm like, they're working. The only time we did run was when it was like, make a free throw and you don't have to run, right? That's the only thing we did. But that's more pressure situations instead of conditioning. It does help conditioning, but it's more like shoot a free throw under pressure.
All right, let me ask this question and we'll wrap with this because this is another pet peeve of mine in regards to interactions with officials, both by kids, coaches, parents, everybody. So my AD hat is on, and it's just, I don't understand why this is such an issue. But as a wrestling referee, I'm sure it's very different. But what perspective have you gained being on the other side, so to speak, that has informed how you then interact and how you comport yourself during games?
Um, what I try to do is I talk to the referees before the games, and I try to make the game as fun for the refs as I possibly can. Sometimes the competitive nature comes out, but then I always make sure if I get too crazy, I try to go apologize to the refs after the game. But I try to have fun with the refs. They'll be shooting a free throw that they do go on their warm up, and I'll tell the ref, like, hey, that's a double dribble right there. And then it like catches them off guard or something. And yeah, I just try to make the most outlandish excuses for, oh, he tripped. Just something dumb just to make the refs laugh. Because they're giving their time for us and they get a bad rap. And no, so I try to make it enjoyable for them as well. And I always try to shake their hands after the game too, tell them thank you. No matter if I didn't agree with their calls or not, I still try to tell them thank you. And then the next game, it's a new game, right? So it's just nice to see you again, talk to them a little bit before the game, and just try to have fun throughout the game. That's my philosophy for them.
Yeah, and it's you catch more bees with honey approach. And I think the power of knowing the officials' names and humanizing them and having conversation with them goes a long way. Definitely much further than yelling from the stands like one of our parents at the football game last night, that you're missing a good game, ref. And I'm like turning around yelling, cut it out. That's not helping. So I appreciate that answer, especially from someone that's done that on the other side. And I appreciate you taking the time to jump on here on a Sunday, Coach. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Appreciate you for having me.